Hello, I'm Robin Vincent and welcome to the October edition of Molten Music Monthly. Yes, it's October, and late in October for that. All the leaves have fallen, my backdrop has collapsed, and it's getting all a bit chilly. But there's still plenty of cool and interesting stuff in the world of computer music, music technology and synthesis to keep us warm and fuzzy while the nights are drawing in. This month we have a sniff of Ableton Live 10. We're getting into some DIY with Monoblocs and the Dreadbox Hades. Cakewalk Momentum reckons it has a killer app. We lose another Mutable module. This time it's clouds. This time it's personal. We get all scaley with the awesomely illuminated, if terribly named, Theoryboard. Expert sleepers put General MIDI into Eurorack. Apogee released some Windows drivers. Tim Exile gives us a shed load of resonators. And Native Instruments gets a shed load of money. Virtual Modular is starting to get really quite exciting. Korg says their next synth begins with a P. Microsoft announced the Surface Book 2. And I'll share my thoughts on the SynthFest up at Sheffield and also what on earth to do about MuffWiggler. But first, last month I gave a shout out to Electronic Sound magazine, which I think is particularly awesome. Well, they like that. In fact, they like that so much that they want to give away a number of copies of the latest edition of Electronic Sound, plus the exclusive vinyl. Oh yes. To get your hands on a copy of this, plus the 7-inch vinyl, all you have to do is the usual sharing, liking, commenting, tell us that you want a copy of the magazine and share it about on social media. So go on to Facebook, like, share, comment. Go on to Twitter, retweet, comment to let me know that you've done it. And I'll draw a couple of people out of a hat and send them a brand new copy of the magazine plus the vinyl. That's pretty cool. Thank you, Electronic Sound. A leaked image of some marketing point of sale materials gives us the clearest indication yet that Ableton Live 10 is about to drop. Version 9 was released back in 2013 and so an update is long overdue. There's been hints and snippets and teasers about it for probably about 6 months or so, but this is the clearest so far because it's a bit of actually printed stuff, and it says that you get 20% off version 9 if you buy it now and a free update to version 10. Companies only do that when it's about to be released, so that's very exciting. Hopefully by the next video I'll have all the details. Dreadbox have released their Hades monophonic bass synthesizer as a DIY kit. It's awesome. Everything you need comes in the box, and in fact the box turns into the case for the synth. You get a cool new front panel, all the components, the PCB, and instructions on how to put it all together. It can either be mounted in the box or you can also mount it in a Eurorack. It's fully analog, it's monophonic, you've got LFOs and envelopes and a fat filter in there, everything you need to start making bleepy noises. And the best thing is, at about 140 euros, it's half the price of the original and you get to build the thing yourself. Another bit of DIY is the Monobloc 01 and 02 from Frequency Central. Now, I initially thought that these were synth voices, but actually it's just a bunch of modules, 5 or 6 modules that are put together on the same front panel. So they have separate PCBs on the back and should be treated completely independently. And then you can patch them together like you would any other modules. The great thing about it is that using this combined front panel means that you get a selection of stuff all ready to go that's cheaper and easier to build. It's sort of like a perfect little Eurorack starter set, but without it being sort of like a semi-modular where some of the wiring is done for you. No, these are all individual, open, completely normal synthesizer modular modules. The 01 gives you an oscillator, a filter, an amplifier, an LFO and 2 envelopes. The 02 doubles up on the oscillator, gives you a different sort of filter and then loses the LFO. At around the same price as the Hades, they're actually really great value for money. The only snag is that they don't come with any components. No, not a whisper of a capacitor or resistor in the box. You have to go and buy those yourself. And well, we all like spending an afternoon with the Radio Spares catalogue. But it's a great way to build a sort of starter lunchbox Eurorack system. Now this is an unexpected thing to come out of Cakewalk. Cakewalk not known for being particularly cool or trendy, but they've just released an app an app that does seem quite interesting. It's called Momentum, and it's basically kind of a personal 4-track recording system. But the cool thing about it is that it's designed alongside a plugin which goes into your DAW, and that enables you to pull the tracks directly from the app straight into your project, straight into your music, onto your desktop. It's all, of course, cloud-based, so you record into your phone up to 4 tracks, and it zips that up to the magic cloud, and then your plugin drags it back off the cloud into your project. So you can be on the bus and you can hum into your phone and then add a little bit of beatbox into it and then go with a comb and a piece of tissue paper. And then when you get home, you can drag that nonsense into your DAW and then completely rework it and destroy it and turn it into something else. But actually, it looks pretty cool. I mean, 4 tracks is quite cool. It's got some effects in there for guitar and some effects for vocals. So you could sort of see it as a little singer-songwriter kind of mobile recording thingy. I mean, the quality of the microphones on phones these days are pretty decent, so you're going to get a half-decent result. Or if you combine that with many of the audio interfaces that are available for iPhones these days, you could create something pretty decent. But always with recording apps, the trouble has been, how do you get that project off the phone and into your proper system? I mean, having to transfer stuff via iTunes is all a bit of a faff, and iOS stuff is never that fond of using files in any kind of normal way. So Momentum sort of bypasses all that by stuffing it up into the cloud and dragging it into your project via another means. Potentially this could mean that you could send a mix, say, from your DAW out via Momentum to a friend, a singer perhaps, who then sings alongside it and then ups that back over the cloud to your project. So thank you, Cakewalk, that's pretty groovy, although sadly, because this is about the cloud, then it has to be about services and subscriptions. Now, there's a free version that you can use for up to 3 projects for up to 5 minutes using MP3 quality. That's not so bad. After that, you've got to pay $2.99 a month. But if you want full quality and 60 minutes of sound recording, then you're going to have to pony up $10 a month. Would you use it often enough to justify the cost? Difficult to say. I mentioned last month how Mutable Instruments had discontinued both peaks and braids, 2 of their most popular modules. Well, shock, horror, the carnage continues. And now they've discontinued clouds, which is possibly their most popular module ever. Everyone talks about clouds. You have to have clouds. Clouds is, alongside maths, the one module you are supposed to get. And funnily enough, I kind of got wind of this potential discontinuation coming along, and so I snapped up a copy of clouds way before I planned to, because I thought they might suddenly become thin on the ground. I knew that I always wanted a clouds, I just hadn't quite gotten around to it. Apparently Olivier never really liked it. I mean, I don't know, I think he's a hard guy to please. Either that or he's a bit of a perfectionist and he's very hard on himself, because these modules are loved by people. People just really get on board with them and just eke out every single possibility. And yet he feels he needs to move on and do something else. I mean, that's quite exciting in itself, because it does mean that we should be getting more new and interesting things from Mutable Instruments. And if he feels that these 3 modules weren't particularly up to scratch, then I imagine the new ones are going to be flipping amazing. But never fear, Clouds is also an open source project, and a number of people have sort of grabbed hold of it and have started building it into other modules. A guy called Kian McAvoy has built the Micro Clouds, which is a much smaller sort of 8 HP module, which has the entire Clouds architecture built in behind it. And that's really very cool. And in many ways, I wish I'd known about that before I bought my normal Clouds. But anyway, it looks excellent, and it's that sort of thing that should keep Clouds alive for the foreseeable future. Terrible name, interesting product. The Theoryboard is a Kickstarter campaign of a fabulously illuminated controller that's designed to keep you within the right key, the right scale, and the right sort of musical mode. It looks like some sort of mad futuristic typewriter where all the communication is done through colour. Inside it has 860 different scales that can be dialed in. The buttons on the right play notes in the chosen scale. The buttons on the left generate the corresponding chords. The basic idea is that you choose a scale and then you can never play a wrong note. It's the sort of thing that crops up a lot these days, and I really like it. I first saw it in Stage Light, where they have their key lock, which does a very similar thing. I've been reviewing the Native Instruments S49, and that has a scale section where you can choose either a chromatic scale or a musical mode or a type of music, and that then restricts the keyboard to playing only the notes within that scale or mode. It's a fabulous tune writing tool. It's a great way of just bashing some stuff out and never having to worry about how accurate your playing is or whether you're getting it together or even having to be any good at it. You just dial up a scale and bash a few notes and it's going to sound okay. I mean, this controller, this flashing light button thing is just kind of amazing to look at. And there must have been a better name they could have come up with than Theoryboard. I mean, that does not describe in any way this illuminated, fabulous pulsating and scale and musical making machine. But it's reached its Kickstarter goal, and so it will become a reality, and I'm looking forward to having a go on one. It's a Eurorack module with a bank of General MIDI sounds. Woohoo! Not really getting this one. Oz from Expert Sleepers thinks this is a fantastic idea. He sort of dreamt it up one night and then couldn't get it out of his head and had to produce the module, just felt completely compelled to put some General MIDI sounds into his Eurorack. And so he has, and so we have the Expert Sleepers General CVGM module. It's got 128 sounds, yay! It's got a saxophone and a pan flute and an orchestral hit, a whole bunch of drum kits as well. Well, actually that's quite useful. See, the funny thing is that within General MIDI, even though I'm being a little bit sarcastic about it, there are some decent sounds in there, particularly if you mess about with them. There's some paddy sounds, some synthy sounds, orchestral sounds, stuff in there that if you apply enough effects and mess with it enough, actually sounds half decent. And putting half decent sounds into Eurorack is not necessarily a bad thing. It just feels wrong somehow. But anyway, he has brought out a lot of CV controls, so you can stuff modulation in there and start messing around with the background MIDI stuff. And also he's done a chord generator, so you can put a single pitch in and dial in different chords, and that can generate polyphonic music, which is very interesting. I had a play with it at SynthFest and I had a chat with him about it, and he's adamant that it's a good idea. And I'm still going, I don't know, it's still General MIDI. And then he put on some MIDI files as if that's supposed to sort of seal the deal, and you're just going, oh my god, these are just crappy MIDI files playing on a crappy GM synth in a hugely expensive and phenomenally interesting Eurorack. So while I applaud the inventiveness and the things that people are going to do with it, I'm just not feeling it. Sorry. I was back in Sheffield for this year's SynthFest. Hooray! First of all, a big shout out to anyone who came up and introduced themselves. That was awesome. I loved that. It was really nice. We just talked about sort of synths and stuff, and it didn't get weird at all. So thanks for that. It just really made me smile, I think. It was at this show a year ago that I first got bitten by the whole modular bug. So I've been messing around in modular synthesis for about a year. Wow, where did that time go? But now that I'm older and perhaps a little bit wiser, I was perhaps less dazzled by the romance of it all, but it was no less enjoyable. The highlights for me were things like chatting with Justin from Abstract Data about his new mixer and his pattern generator. I chatted to Vicky from the Noise Orchestra about making noises and performances and weird stuff. I chatted to Zoe from Transistor Sound Labs, who wrote the firmware for their awesome Stepper Acid sequencer. It's like a 303 style sequencer, which is far too wide for my Eurorack, but looks like a heck of a lot of fun to play with. I chatted to Paul from Soulsby about how the whole Eurorack thing has been going from him, and he basically said, cool, blimey, that's a load of work. And actually, it's so much easier dealing with desktop synthesizers because people understand them. People buy them in huge amounts, whereas Eurorack seems to be a bit more of a curiosity. So he's going to keep at it, but it's not all that he thought it might be. He feels that the modular world is in some ways far too busy, and it's really difficult to get yourself heard or to rise above the constant releasing of all these different little modules. And then everybody is on to the next one, is on to the next thing. I thought that was a really interesting perspective. And I chatted to the guy from Korg UK all about these new drift boxes that they're trying to import from Japan. So all in all, it was really the chatting to people that was the most interesting rather than the playing on the gear. I mean, there was tons and tons of synths and things to poke at, but it was, funnily enough, the human interaction that made it all worthwhile, I think. There were some very cool seminars, but I was never queuing up in the right queue at the right time in order to experience them, and then they seemed to lock the door once everybody had got in. and there were some performances going on all day that I could never seem to find. So I think for next year's SynthFest, you need to do a little bit better on the old signage and get a much bigger place to have the seminars so that people can sort of drop in and drop out as they fancy. I mean, last year they had some of the seminars in the open hall with sort of wireless headphones, and I can see that that was perhaps technologically difficult. It kind of really worked in that you could, oh look, see something going on and kind of join in if you fancied, and then wander off if you liked. But anyway, if there's one next year, I heartily recommend that you go along. Now, Apogee make exquisite audio interfaces. They've always been interesting, always been desirable, always been high-end, fabulous, wonderful, and always Mac only. Well, Apogee have just announced they are releasing some Windows drivers for some of their interfaces. Wow! The interfaces in question are the Quartet, the Duet, and the One. Now that's all super exciting, except for that these are really quite old interfaces. The Quartet was released in 2012, the other two released in 2013, and in music technology terms, in audio interface terms, they're pretty ancient. I mean, I don't mean to sound ungrateful, but it does seem a lot like they've got a warehouse full of USB audio interfaces which Mac users don't want because they've all gone Thunderbolt, and they're not really sure what to do with. So some bright spark said, I know, let's write some Windows drivers and we can dump them all on that bunch of idiots. That may not be how it went down, but that's certainly kind of what it feels like. But that said, I do still really like them. But come on, Apogee, throw us a bone. Do something interesting and exciting and make it for Windows, as well as Mac. We don't care whether it's for Mac or not, but do something intentional and new. Innovate. Come on, Apogee. Following on from his shed-load of oscillators comes Tim Exile's shed-load of resonators. Yes, it's another one of these crazy reactor player synth type modules, software things that Tim Exile really loves to do. The idea of this one is that you pump in some kind of beat from anything you like and it will generate resonant frequencies, pitches, harmonies, chords and other weird and twisted and mangled musical soundscapes. He says he likes this sort of thing because he doesn't really have a clue what to do musically, whereas he has a lot of thoughts on how to do things rhythmically. So he plays a bit of percussion and he wants music just to be generated around that. An interesting idea, and it seems to work quite well in its own sort of crazy twisted way. There's a whole load of morphing going on, there's polyphonic LFOs, there's scale mapping and swarm switching and all sorts of bubbly, resonant kind of goodness. And it's all really just lovely stuff designed to be played with. It runs in the free Reactor player and costs 49 quid. Now, controversy hit the modular community this month when the alarmingly named MuffWiggler.com, the modular and synthesis forum, went down. Some brave souls took the opportunity to talk about it on some other forums and Facebook groups, and the question of the name came up, as it often does. Of course, any community that is based on a hobby of twiddling knobs is going to have its fair share of innuendo. But what started off as a conversation about whether it might be a nice idea to change the name into something less disturbing, it rapidly descended into a disaster of shouting and abuse. There's a large group of people who don't want anything to change at all, regardless of whether it sounds a bit like, at worst, a porn channel, or at best, a boys' club for boys talking about boys' music technology. I mean, I don't understand why anybody would not want to do everything they can to make a community feel open, friendly, and inclusive. I mean, MuffWiggler, it doesn't really do that. I mean, that's not to say that it's a terrible place full of terrible people. No, not at all. No, it's an awesome resource full of some very, very helpful people. But sadly, it's on a platform that signposts to certain groups of people, like women, that they're not really welcome. And sometimes it tolerates a sort of locker room attitude and language that presumes a male audience. So, well, if you're offended by the name, well, then go somewhere else, they say. Well, it's not that easy because there's actually quite a large number of independent module manufacturers who have their support and contact pages on MuffWiggler. So if it turns people away, makes people feel uncomfortable, or even possibly offends people, then why not just change it? I mean, modular synthesis is all about module diversity and sonic inclusivity. And why wouldn't we want our environment to reflect that? Why would we defend something which supports a notion that music technology is just for boys? Or that you have to accept certain levels of behaviour or attitude in order to participate in it? And then, in the middle of all the heartbreaking Me Too reaction to sexual harassment, Steve Harmon from modular makers Synthrotek posted a meme using the Synthrotek account that used an image of Harvey Weinstein, which he then claimed was funny, ironic or edgy or something. Now, the speed with which the community condemned him was just extraordinarily impressive. You know, it's exactly the sort of dickish behaviour that's been tolerated for far too long. And it's actually heartening to see that change. But rather than apologising for being a bit of a dick, Steve doubled down and defended himself and went on to create videos of how awesomely ironic and edgy he is. And the whole thing went very bad, very quickly. I mean, I think it's great and important that he was taken to task over behaving like a knob. But we really don't need to resort to death threats or abuse in order to do that. But what's awesome is that people are standing up and saying that this sort of misogynistic behaviour is not welcome in our community. And that's fabulous. Now, MuffWiggler has returned, and in this department, nothing has changed. And that's a shame. I mean, there's no doubt that MuffWiggler has been incalculably helpful to a large proportion of the community. But it's really time, I think, to grow up. But a couple of other forums have appeared as an alternative place for talking about synthesis and modular and stuff. One I'd recommend is allthesynths.info. It can only be a success if we all get in there and make it one. So please go and have a look. Join in the discussion and see what you think. And I'd like to give a shout out to Guy Taylor, who runs the Eurorack Synthesizers Facebook group. That group hosted a lot of the discussion about MuffWiggler and also about Synthrotek. And I was impressed at how he stepped in and locked threads when things started to get out of hand. And he published an awesome statement reiterating the group's commitment to inclusivity and diversity. It really is just a great place to hang out. And in my view, anything that moves us forward has got to be good. Great, let's get back to the gear. Native Instruments have received a €50 million investment by private equity firm EMH Partners. That's extraordinary and I think unprecedented in the music technology industry. Newly stinking rich CEO Daniel Haver says that now they are ready for the next chapter. And then he got in his private jet and buggered off to his private island. But the vibe is all about empowering, it's all about intuition, it's all about access, it's all about creating awesome musical ecosystems by coming up with user-centric and intuitively powerful devices. That's great, but what I hope is that this is all going to be about creating a standard, a new way forward, taking their experience of NKS and those software-hardware integrations and taking us perhaps to a new level that supersedes MIDI. Maybe we can push forward into some better protocols. Maybe Native Instruments can introduce standards that all manufacturers can adopt and get on board with and produce a whole new level of software hardware integration that we've never seen before. That would be amazing. But what will probably happen is that they'll release a million different little gadgets for the iPad, because that's the mass market, baby. That's where everybody is. That's where the return on the investment will be. It will be in an app and it will be in a subscription of some kind. However, I will keep on hoping for the extraordinary. Microsoft have announced the long-awaited Surface Book 2. The original was released 2 years ago and I was at that party. That was back when Microsoft thought I was cool. But the Surface Book 2 features 8th generation Intel technology, provided you buy the i7. The i5 is still 7th generation technology. It has some awesome optional graphics which make it fantastic for gaming, but also for augmented reality, virtual reality, mixed reality, or whatever you're calling your reality these days. The big news is that it has a USB 3.1 port. Hooray! Do you have anything that's USB 3.1? I don't have anything that's USB 3.1. What could I possibly use this port for? I don't know. Because the thing is, it's not Thunderbolt. Don't get drawn in. It's not Thunderbolt. It's just USB 3.1 on a USB-C port. So it will support, high-speed data transfers and it will support powering and running of screens and other interesting things like that. But what we actually want is Thunderbolt, because all the latest and most interesting audio interfaces are Thunderbolt equipped. And that, of course, is what the MacBooks have. So yay, USB-C port, and oh, it's not Thunderbolt. But other than that, the specs and all that jazz look excellent, as they always do. But will it work for music production? Can you guarantee a real-time, low latency, glitch-free audio playback? Can it do that? We just don't know, and we're not going to know until somebody tests it out. So please, Microsoft, if you're out there, please send me one. Send me one in. I'll check it out, and then we will know whether it can do music software and music hardware, because it's not like anything else. It's not like drawing, sketching, design, all those other things that you're really into. To do real-time, low latency audio requires everything in the machine to be working properly and right in order to get that data in and out super fast, super quick, with no glitching, no buffering, no messing about. And we're not going to know that until we try. The paper specs are not going to tell us anything. The little videos are not going to tell us anything. It's until someone like myself tries it out, then we will know. But you know, it looks great. I'd love to have one, love to try it out. Let's see if we can sort that out soon. There's a whole load of stuff going on in virtual Eurorack modular synthesis at the moment. First of all, we have S-Modular. It's a new app for iPad, which gives you kind of like a lunchbox Eurorack, just right there on your iPad. It's semi-modular. It does have some stuff wired together in the background, but for the most part, you've got patching, joy, and wonderfulness all over the front, all from different independent modules, modulation, noise, sequencing, all that stuff. It's like having a virtual lunchbox on your iPad. It's pretty cool. And then last month I mentioned VCV Rack, which is this amazing, or what's turning out to be an amazing sort of Eurorack simulation. There's more and more stuff coming out for it all the time, and it's not released properly until next month, although you can go and try it out now. The beta version is free to try. And I mentioned last month how there wasn't a simple LFO with it. Well, now there's loads and loads of those coming in with all sorts of filters and sequencers and matrix mixers. There's an entire TR-808 has been designed as a module for it. It seems the development and third-party developers are just throwing stuff at this environment. And I think when it's released, it's going to be very, very exciting. And just to throw Softube Modular a bone, they have released a Buchla module. Is that how you pronounce it? Buchla or Buchla? Buchla? I don't know. But it's the Buchla 259E twisted waveform generator. It's fabulous, if you understand that sort of thing, and it looks really, really excellent. And it's good to see Softube up in their game. We're nearly done. In the Korg Microcast podcast, Vice President of Sales and International Marketing, John McCuppery announced that Korg will be releasing a brand new synthesizer at NAMM 2018. That's in January. He said that it was worked on by the same team who did the Minilog and the Monolog, and that it will be mind-blowing, and that it'll be something we've never seen. It will be the most crazy engineering we could ever believe, and that how it'd be strangely familiar, and yet, whoa, we won't have any idea what's going on with it. Well, it sounds exciting. It could be a little arranger keyboard. Woo. Or perhaps a new tuner. But what he will say is that it begins with P. It has 8 characters in its name, and it may probably contain some numbers. He says that he thought the name up after a few glasses of wine. I don't know if that's relevant, but that gives us something to look forward to. And finally, I've decided to launch a Patreon campaign. What's Patreon, I hear you say? Well, it's a way that you can financially support me in all the videos and the content that I do. And in return, I'll keep on making more of the videos that you want to see. You could see it as a magazine subscription, or buying me a pint down the pub, or perhaps you could see it as investing in some really great telly. But best of all, becoming a patron means that you would be joining me on my journey. You're becoming part of my community, and you'd be able to help me curate the future of Molten music technology content. So please, consider it. The link is in the description. Go and have a look, and I'd be extremely grateful. Coming soon, my next video will be, I promise, on the multi-touch side of Bitwig 2.2.1, running on the Surface Pro 2017 and the Windows Full Creators Update. And following on from that, I will be building my Turing module. And there's so much more, so much more. So please remember, share, retweet, repost, comment, and all those sort of things in order to snag yourself a copy of Electronic Sound Magazine plus the vinyl. And if you have any other comments or questions, then please stick them in the comments below and we can have a jolly old chat about things. In the meantime, go and make some tunes.